Beyond Range, The Buddha at the Table, a book based off of the teaching of Siddhartha Gautama, a book for the player who is tired of being wanted from. A note before the book begins. There is a feeling I want to give you. It is the feeling of being looked at by someone who wants nothing from you. Not your money, not your attention, not your agreement, not even your gratitude. Someone who is just glad you are there, whose looking is a kind of giving. If you have ever been on the receiving end of that look, from a grandmother, a dog, a stranger on a long flight, a friend who finally stopped trying to fix you, you know the feeling I mean. The shoulders drop, the breath gets longer. You suddenly do not need to be anyone in particular. That feeling is the whole project. Everything else in this book, the poker, the Buddhists, the koans, the math beyond the math, is downstream of it. Beyond Range is the name for the place a player operates from when they no longer need the table for anything. This book is a long, slow walk toward that place. I want nothing from you. Read the whole thing, read one paragraph and close it. Read it at the casino bathroom mirror at 4 a.m. between sessions. Use it as a coaster. The book does not need you to do anything with it. It is just sitting here on your side. Prologue. The game inside the game. There are two games being played at every poker table. The first game is the one with the chips. Cards come out, bets go in, someone scoops, someone reloads. This is the game everyone agrees they're playing. There are books for it, charts for it, solvers for it, coaches who will charge you 4 figures an hour to optimize it. You know this game well. If you have picked up this book, you have probably given years of your life to it. The second game is harder to see. It has no rules and no rake. It is the game of what you are doing with yourself while the first game is happening. Whether your value of yourself is going up and down with the stack, whether you are present in the chair or whether you are in some future version of the night where you have already won or already lost, whether the human across from you is a person or a problem, whether you came here to play or to prove or to escape or to be seen or to forget. Most players will spend their whole career playing the first game and never know the second one is there. A few players notice it. They start to feel that there is a layer underneath the strategy layer, that the way they hold themselves between hands matters more than the hands. They start to feel that something about poker is teaching them something about being alive. They get a little embarrassed about this and don't tell their friends. They keep watching solver runs. But the second game has them. This book is for those players. It is for the player who suspects that there is a way of sitting at a table that is itself a kind of mastery separate from the cards. It is for the player who has had the experience of running deep in a tournament and noticing mid-hand that they feel weirdly empty, that the thing they thought they wanted is not actually filling them. It is for the player who has won a big pot and felt unloved at the same time and didn't know what to do with that information. The Buddhists noticed the second game 2,500 years ago. They were not playing poker. They were sitting under trees and on mountainsides and in monasteries, but they were studying the same thing. What is happening inside a human being while the world is happening to them? They figured out a great deal about it. Their language is sometimes dressed up in robes and bells, but if you strip it down, it is almost shockingly practical. It applies to a $1, $2 home game in Bangkok and a final table in Monaco and the no-stakes game you played with your cousins at Christmas. The Buddha himself was, in his way, the greatest player I have ever heard of. Not because he won. By the time we meet him in most of the stories, he is not even playing, but because he had completely solved the second game. He was a person who could not be tilted. Not by insult, not by loss, not by death, not by his own students misunderstanding him for 40 years. He sat in any room exactly the way he sat under any tree, present, available, wanting nothing. This is the strangest thing about him, and the thing this book is going to keep returning to. He did not want anything from anyone he met. He had no quota of converts. He had no need for you to agree. He was famously willing to let you walk away. The texts are full of him saying more or less, test it for yourself. If it works, keep it. If not, drop it. I have no skin in your game. Imagine sitting across from a player like that. Imagine being a player like that. The phrase beyond range is a poker term first, and we'll get to its technical meaning before long, but it points at something larger. In poker, a range is the set of hands a person could be holding given how they have played up to this point. To be beyond range is to act in a way that is not on the chart, that cannot be solved for, that the math has nothing to say about, because what produced it was not a calculation, but a presence. It is a move that comes from somewhere underneath strategy. I am going to argue that this is also where the best of life happens, not in our strategies, in what is underneath them. The structure of this book is borrowed from an old Zen tradition. 10 gates, 10 stations, 10 moves. Each chapter opens with a story, sometimes a Zen story, sometimes a Buddha story, sometimes a story from a casino, and then we sit with it for a while. I am not going to tell you what to do with the stories. The stories themselves will be doing the work. My job is to keep gently pointing at them and trusting that you are already a person capable of seeing. If you finish the book and have learned nothing about poker, that is okay. If you finish the book and play a little softer, a little freer, a little more in love with the strange humans around the felt, that is the whole point. If you finish the book and notice one ordinary Tuesday that someone is looking at you and wanting nothing from you, and you do not need to do anything to deserve it, that is more than I could ask for. That is what the book is for. We can begin. Chapter 1. Mastered by the game. There is a Zen story that goes like this. In old Japan, there was a poet named Jitoku. He was the kind of man other men were quiet around. His verses were good, his calligraphy was good, his clothes were good, his name was known in 3 provinces. He had decided, in the way successful men sometimes decide such things, that the only thing left to acquire was enlightenment. So he made an appointment with the abbot Eke, who was famous for being severe, and he traveled a long way to meet him. He was shown into the master's room. He bowed. He had not finished bowing when the old man hit him across the head with a stick. Jitoku straightened up. No one had ever struck him in his life. His face was hot. There was a rule, though, a Zen rule, that students must not speak or act unless invited. He kept his mouth shut and withdrew. He found Eke's senior monk and announced that he would be challenging the abbot to a duel. The senior monk looked at him for a long moment and said, "Can't you see he was being kind to you?" Jitoku did not understand. He was furious, but because he was, in spite of himself, a serious man, he did what the senior monk suggested. He went and sat. He sat for 3 days. He sat with the humiliation of being struck. He sat with the feeling of being unimportant for the first time in years. He sat with the suspicion that something he had built his whole life on was not as solid as he had imagined. On the 3rd night, something broke open. He saw something. The texts say he experienced an ecstatic awakening. The next morning he went to Eki and was confirmed. Then he went back to the senior monk and thanked him and said, "And as for the master, his blow was far too gentle." I want to tell you about the worst hand of my poker career. I will not tell you what the cards were because that is not what the story is about. I will tell you that I was up. I had been up for hours. I had reached the part of an upswing where you start to feel that the universe has, after long deliberation, finally agreed with your opinion of yourself. I was loose, I was glowing, I was in my own private commentary track cooking. And then someone three-bet me, and I went with it, and on the river I made a hero call that in my mind was going to be the highlight of the night. It was not the highlight of the night. I lost. I lost in the way you lose when you have already started spending the chips in your head. I lost 2 stacks. I lost the upswing. I lost, more importantly, the version of myself I had been narrating for the previous 4 hours. The river card hit, and my body did something I have come to recognize as a kind of small death. The shoulders go up, the breath stops, the mouth makes a shape. There is a part of your brain that briefly cannot accept what your eyes are seeing. I did the polite thing. I nodded, I said nice hand. I went to the bathroom. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror, and what I saw was something I will not forget. It was the look of a man who has just been hit with a stick by a master he did not know he had hired. The deepest teachers in your life will not look like teachers. They will look like beats. They will look like the river card that should not have come. They will look like the kid in the hoodie who shoves into you with a hand the chart says he shouldn't have. They will look like the night your reads were perfect and you still lost. They will look like the moment you finally cracked the limit you had been climbing toward for 2 years and felt, instead of triumph, a queasy nothing. The Jitoku story is funny because Jitoku is so insulted. He has come a long way to be improved, and the master, instead of improving him, simply hits him in the face. But of course that is the improvement. Jitoku has come to be praised. He has come to add zen to his already impressive collection of accomplishments. He has come, in poker terms, to crush a soft game. And what the master does in one efficient gesture is take all of that off the table. The stick says, you think you are here as a poet. You are not here as a poet. The poet is a costume. Take it off. The river card says the same thing. The bad beat says, you think you are here as a winner. You are not here as a winner. The winner is a costume. Take it off. You can hear this and refuse to hear it. You can challenge the dealer to a duel. You can blame the cooler. You can rant in the group chat. You can tilt the next session. You can, like Jitoku, withdraw silently with a stiff face, intending to come back tomorrow with a weapon. Many players do exactly this for decades. They are at war with the table. Every loss is a slight that must be answered. Or you can sit for 3 days. By sit for 3 days, I do not necessarily mean stop playing. I mean stop trying to immediately fix the feeling. Don't write the angry tweet. Don't text the friend. Don't even yet study the hand. Just be a person who lost in a way that hurt, and let the hurt finish saying what it is saying. There is a great deal of useful information in a beat, but it is not where you think it is. It is not in the river card. It is in your face after the river card. It is in your shoulders. It is in the small, hot, embarrassed feeling of having been seen needing something you said you didn't need. This is what mastered by the game means. Not that you beat the game, that the game sometimes beats you in the precise place you are softest, and that you let it. The Buddhists have an even better story for this, and it is a story from the life of the Buddha himself. A young man in a village came up to him one day and called him every name he could think of. He told the Buddha he was a fraud, a fool, a liar, a thief. The crowd around them got nervous. The Buddha listened the way he listened to everything, and when the young man was finally done, the Buddha asked him a question. If a man brings you a gift, he said, and you do not accept the gift, to whom does it then belong? The young man, suspicious, said, it belongs to the one who tried to give it. Just so, said the Buddha, I do not accept your insult. so it remains with you. I have been carrying this story around in my pocket for years. I bring it out at the table sometimes, between hands, when something has happened, a needle, a slow roll, a guy explaining to me what I should have done. I think that is a gift. I do not have to accept it. And I notice when I am at my best that I can let the man keep his gift, not as a kind of poker Zen tilt control discipline, although it does that work for free, as a simple matter of fact. The gift was never mine, it was always his. The deeper version of the story, the version that took me longer to see, is this. A beat is also a gift you do not have to accept. Not the loss is just chips, and chips are paint. The injury, the small thump in the chest, the narrative the mind starts spinning the moment the river card lands. I always lose to this guy. The sight is rigged. I should have folded. I knew it. I'm running so bad. I'm a fish. I'm not built for this. All of that gift, you do not have to accept it. It can remain with whoever sent it. You can let it sit there on the felt, untouched, like a card no one called for. This is not the same as not caring. Buddha cared. The Buddha cared about almost everything more than the people around him did. What he had figured out was that taking on the insult was a separate move from hearing the insult. He could hear it perfectly clearly and not pick it up. A player who can do this at the table is a player who has solved something that no chart will ever solve for them. Notice that Jitoku did not become enlightened because Eke hit him. He became enlightened because he sat with what Eke did for 3 days without flinching away from it. The hit alone would have produced nothing. The hit alone produces nothing for most of us. The hit plus the willingness to stay near the feeling the hit produced, that is the alchemy. The hit is information. The sitting is digestion. I think a great many of us, when we lose a hand that means something to us, eject immediately. We get up, we refresh the lobby, we open YouTube, we tell the story to a friend in a way that lets the friend reassure us. We loop into the next hand and the next and the next, and at no point do we let the original feeling actually arrive. What I am asking you to consider is that the feeling is not the problem. The feeling is the gift. The feeling is your teacher trying to land. Every time you refuse to feel a beat, you have in a small way declined an appointment with your master. Sit for 3 days. You do not need 3 literal days. Sometimes 3 minutes will do. Sometimes 3 breaths. Just stay. The hand is over. The chips are gone. Your master is in the room with you. Don't withdraw and challenge him to a duel. He has nothing to fight you for. He has nothing to take from you. He is in his rough way on your side. Here is where beyond range comes in. There is a kind of player, you have probably met 1 or 2, they are rare, who you cannot tilt, you cannot get under their skin. You cannot make them feel small with a needle, you cannot make them feel big with a compliment. You cannot make them chase, you cannot make them fold for fear, you cannot make them call for ego. Their game is unstuck from their self-worth. They are playing the cards. They are also somehow not playing anything at all. They are just sitting there. Their attention is on you in a way that is warm but disinterested. They are interested in you, but they don't need you for anything. This is the player I want you to become. It is not a technical accomplishment. There is no module you can buy that teaches it. You cannot grind your way into it through volume, because volume without sitting only deepens the patterns volume is supposed to correct. You can only get there by being mastered by the game many times, by being struck by the stick of 1,000 bad beats and 1,000 coolers and 1,000 quiet defeats, and instead of fighting it, sitting in front of it until something opens. When something opens, you will not know how to describe it. You will just notice one ordinary session that you are not afraid anymore. The button comes around, you make a play, it does or does not work, You collect or you reload. The next hand begins. Inside, the room is quiet. You have been hit, and you have thanked the hand that hits you, and you are still here. This is the first gate. Chapter 2. The Last Nightmare. Someone once asked the Buddha why he kept talking about a place beyond suffering when he had also told them to stop wanting things. If we should not want, the questioner said, why do you keep dangling this prize in front of us? You are contradicting yourself. The Buddha smiled, the way he always did when someone caught him at it. He was not, he said, dangling a prize. He was describing a fact. There is a difference between telling a thirsty man that water exists and selling him a bottle. I am not asking you to chase nirvana, he said. I am telling you it is already where you are standing. This did not satisfy the questioner. It rarely satisfies anyone the first time they hear it. The mind wants a goal. The mind wants a plan. The mind wants an inbox to clear. The moment you give it a peaceful destination, it turns the destination into a job and begins immediately to suffer. This is what I want to tell you about this chapter. It is about a particular kind of nightmare that hides inside everything we call ambition. In poker, the nightmare wears many masks. The most obvious mask is the bankroll goal. The player who decides in January that this is the year he plays $5, $10. The player who decides after a good month that she is finally going to take a real shot at the next limit. The player who fixes on a number, 6 figures, the World Series, the stake deal, the move to Vegas, and lets that number be the reason this hand matters, and the next one, and the next. There is nothing wrong with goals. You may have noticed that I am writing a book which is a sort of goal, and I am not going to sit here and tell you to never have one. The problem is more specific than that. The problem is what the goal does to the present hand. When you have a number in your head, every hand is no longer a hand. It is a contribution to the number or a subtraction from it. A pot you win is not a pot you won, it is progress. A pot you lose is not a pot you lost, it is behind schedule. You stop playing the game in front of you and start playing the score. And the score, of course, is never quite where it should be. The score is always taunting you. Closer, almost, not yet. You should have been here months ago. This is the nightmare. Not having goals. That is just being a person with a future. The nightmare is when the goal eats the present. When you can no longer be here in this hand with this opponent because some imagined future version of you is in the room demanding to be funded. I have watched some of the best players in the world lose to this. They have the technical chops to crush almost any game they choose, and they cannot win because they are not actually present at the table. Their attention is half a year ahead of their body. They make the right play and resent that it didn't pay. They make the wrong play and panic that it has set them back. The pot in front of them is never the pot in front of them. It is always a piece of a story about the year. The Buddha would have recognized this immediately. He had a name for it, dukkha, usually translated as suffering, but more precisely something like the friction of being in disagreement with what is. The pot lost is just the pot lost. The dukkha is the silent extra hand of this should not have happened. This is not what I needed. This is going to look bad on the spreadsheet. The chips left the table. The dukkha is still here, in your chest, getting louder. There is a deeper version of this nightmare, and I want to be careful with it because it is the version that gets the spiritual players too. Some of you, by the time you find this book, will have done some inner work. You will have meditated, read, gone to retreats, sat with people who pointed at the moon. You will have heard in one form or another that the answer is presence, that there is something underneath the striving that is more spacious and more alive than the striving could ever be. and you will, being who you are, have decided to go get that thing. You will have set a goal, in other words, of escaping goals. You will have decided that you are going to become the kind of player who is not chasing. You will have begun very subtly to chase non-chasing. This is the last nightmare. It is the most elegant trap the mind has, and it is the reason this book is called what it is. Beyond range is not another destination. It is not a place you arrive at by playing 2,000 more hours of solver-approved poker, or by meditating for the right number of minutes, or by reading the right number of books. The moment you make beyond range a goal, you have made it just another item on the want list, and the want list is the thing it was supposed to free you from. What then do we do with it? The Buddha's answer is simple and almost annoying. We notice that we are already there. Not all the time, not in the way that solves everything forever, but often, in flashes, in the breath you took right before reading the sentence when nothing was being chased. In the small space between hands when you put your phone down and didn't pick it back up for a second. In the moment after a win when for one strange beat you did not feel any taller. In the moment after a loss when for one strange beat you did not feel any smaller. These flashes are not previews of a coming attraction. They are the thing itself. They are not a sneak peek of nirvana. They are nirvana in a 4-second clip. The mind, when it sees them, says, "That was nice. How do I get more of that?" And the moment it asks, the moment is already gone, because the asking is the friction. What we are training in this book and in the hand and in this strange evening of being alive is the capacity to recognize the clip without grasping for the rerun. I want to tell you about the cleanest player I have ever known. He is not famous. You have not heard of him. He plays a mid-stakes live game in a city I will not name, and he has been playing it for almost 2 decades. He is a winning player, but not a star. He has had years where he could have stepped up and didn't. People who know the game well, when his name comes up, say things like he could be anywhere. There is sometimes a wistful tone in it, as if he were a wasted talent. I want to defend him. What I have noticed about him, watching him over the years, is that he is home at the table. He is not at the table to get somewhere else. He is not playing his way out of his current stake into a bigger one. He is not playing his way toward retirement. He is not playing his way out of his marriage or into a different life. He is just there, playing cards, talking to the regs, eating his terrible casino sandwich. When he wins a pot, he scoops it and shuffles his chips. When he loses a pot, he reloads and shuffles his chips. There is a kind of breathing in him that is not affected by the outcome. The first time I met him, I assumed he was a low-ambition player. The third time I met him, I realized he was something else entirely. He was a man who had quietly figured out that the table was not on the way to anything. It was a place, it was this place, and he was here. When I asked him once, in a between-session chat, if he had ever wanted to take a shot at the higher games, he laughed and said, "I take a shot every hand." I don't think he was being cute. I think he meant it. Each hand for him was the shot. Each hand was the limit he was trying to break. Not because he needed the chips, because the hand itself was where the alive part lived. He is, without using the word, a player who has gotten through the last nightmare. He is not chasing nirvana. He is not chasing not chasing. He is just at the table. If you sit with him for an hour, you start to want to be like that. This is the test, by the way, of whether someone has actually solved this. People who have figured it out will make you feel small. There is a kind of spiritual teacher and a kind of poker pro and a kind of life coach who, even when they are saying the right words, leave you feeling slightly worse about yourself when the conversation ends. They have made the freedom into another currency, and they are looking down at you from the top of their stack. People who have actually solved it leave you feeling more like yourself. Not improved, just more here. They have no investment in your becoming anything in particular. They are not selling you the seat, they are just glad you came. This is what wanting nothing from feels like. It is the temperature of a person who has gotten through the last nightmare. One more thing about the goal mind, because it is wily. There is a move the mind makes when it is caught at this. Once you have read a paragraph like the one above, the mind will say, okay, I get it. The goal is to be like the cleanest player. The goal is to not have a goal. And it will set about, with a great deal of energy, becoming a person who does not have goals. It will be very impressive at it for about 3 days. This is not a problem. This is just what the mind does. You do not need to crush this move. You only need to catch it. You only need to notice gently when the wanting has reattached itself to the freedom. The catching itself is the work, not the eradicating, just the catching. You do not have to win this argument with your mind. You only have to keep, every so often, noticing what your mind is doing. The mind catches its own tail eventually. The mind, when it is watched without an agenda, becomes quieter on its own, not because you forced it, because attention is itself a kind of light, and the things the mind does in the dark do not survive being seen. The next time you sit down to play, here is what I would like you to try. For one hand only, just the first hand of your session, make no goals. Do not, even silently, decide that this is going to be a good night. Do not decide that you are going to play tight or aggressive or anything in particular. Do not decide what limit you will move up to or how much you would like to win or how late you will stay. Just sit down, look at the table, look at the players, look at the dealer, notice the temperature in the room, notice the felt under your hand. Then play the first hand the way the first hand asks to be played. That is it. After the first hand, you can go right back to whatever scoreboard you live by. Most of us will. The point of the exercise is not to convert you to anything. The point is to give you 1 minute of evidence that there is a way to be at the table without the future in the chair next to you breathing down your neck. 1 minute is enough. 1 minute is the door. You do not have to walk through the door right now. You only have to know it is there. This is the second gate. Chapter 3. Players of a game. The story goes that Muso, one of the great teachers of his era, was crossing a river by ferry with a young disciple. The boat was crowded. They were almost across when a drunken samurai came stumbling down the bank, leapt aboard at the last moment, and nearly capsized them. The samurai was in a foul mood. He looked around the boat at the packed-in passengers and said, "We are stuffed in here like sardines." Then he pointed at Muso, who was sitting quietly in his robes, and said, "Why don't we throw the priest over the side?" Muso looked up. "Please be patient," he said. "We'll be across soon." The samurai roared. "Me? Patient? Listen, old man, if you don't jump off this boat, I am going to drown you myself." Muso did not respond. The samurai, infuriated by the silence, raised the iron fan he carried and brought it down on Muso's head, hard enough to draw blood. The disciple had had enough. He was a strong man and a young one, and he had been raised on stories of the samurai class abusing the monastic class, and he stood up. "Master," he said, "I cannot let this stand." Muso looked at him, blood running down the side of his face, and smiled. "Why get so worked up over a trifle?" he said. "It is exactly in matters like this that the training proves itself. Patience is more than just a word." Then, the story says he composed a small poem on the spot. The beater and the beaten are mere players of a game, ephemeral as a dream. When they reached the other side and disembarked, The samurai, who had been watching the old man closely the whole time, fell to his knees in the dirt and asked to become his student. This is the most important story in the book. I will probably tell it again before we are done. I want to be careful here because there is a way to read this story that ruins it. The story can be read, especially by men who have spent time in poker rooms, as a story about toughness, as if the lesson were Muso took the hit and didn't flinch, therefore Muso wins. As if the moral were that we should all train ourselves to be hit by drunken samurai without complaint, the way a high-stakes pro absorbs a bad beat without showing it. That reading is not wrong, exactly. Muso is tough in a sense, but the toughness is not the point. The toughness is a side effect, what Muso has that the samurai does not have, and that the disciple does not yet have, is a perception of the frame. He has seen that the situation on the boat is not, in some final sense, a situation. It is a moment in a thing that is passing. The samurai who hits him is doing something the samurai is doing, driven by drink, by status, by some humiliation upstream, and Muso happens to be the surface that received it. There is no Muso and samurai, there is just a boat crossing a river with some weather happening on board. The poem is the key. Mere players of a game. He doesn't say the samurai is not real. He doesn't say the blood is not real. He says we are players. We are inside a thing. The thing has a shape. The shape is not personal. When you understand that the thing is not personal, an entirely different freedom is available to you. You are not absolved from the thing. You are not above it. You are simply not anymore taking the bait of identity that the thing is offering you. The samurai is offering Muso an identity, the priest who got hit, who must now either fight back or be humiliated. Muso, in his stillness, declines. He doesn't refuse the situation. He refuses the identity inside the situation. This is the deepest move in poker. I am going to spend the rest of this chapter on it. Here is what I see at the table almost every session. A hand begins, two people get involved, money goes in, the river card lands, someone wins, someone loses, and then, and this is the part to watch, the two people take on identities. The winner becomes, for a few minutes, the guy who won that pot. He sits a little differently. His chips are stacked a little differently. He laughs at the jokes a little differently. The loser becomes, also for a few minutes, the guy who lost that pot. His shoulders are different. His chips are different. His next bet is different. This is exactly the move Muso refused. The samurai's blow tries to make Muso into the priest who got hit. The river card tries to make you into the guy who got cracked. The big win tries to make you into the guy who's running good. In every case, an event has happened, and the event is offering you a costume, and the costume has rules about how to behave for the rest of the night. A player who is playing freely is a player who does not put the costume on. I want to be specific. I am not saying the winning player and the losing player should feel the same things. They will feel different things, because they are humans and humans feel things, and $1,000 in your pocket feels different from $1,000 not in your pocket. That is fine. The Buddha did not, by the way, teach that all things should feel the same. He taught that we should not attach to the feelings, which is a much more particular and humane request. What I am saying is that the identity the win or the loss offers you is optional. You can decline it. You can win a big pot and notice that something pleasant happened in your chest and that someone might tip you for it and that the dealer is moving on. And you can also notice that you are still the person you were before that card hit. You can lose a big pot and notice that something unpleasant happened in your chest and that you are slightly poorer, and you can also notice that you are still the person you were before that card hit. You are not the guy who won the pot. You are not the guy who lost the pot. You are a player in a game. The game is ephemeral as a dream. In poker, the word range has a precise meaning. A player's range is the set of hands they could plausibly be holding given how the action has gone. If a player raises from early position and then 3 bets after I call, their range is narrow and strong. If they limp from the cutoff, their range is wide and softer. Good players spend years training themselves to think in ranges instead of in specific hands because thinking in ranges is more accurate. The actual cards a person is holding are random. Their range is structural. To be beyond range, to make a play that is not on the chart, that the solver cannot account for, that is not in the range your opponent is putting you on, is a powerful move. It is the move that breaks people's models of you. I want to tell you that the deepest version of Beyond Range is not a strategic move at all. The deepest version of Beyond Range is what Musso did on the boat. Musso is, in poker terms, completely off the chart. The samurai is putting him on a range. The range is something like priests, when struck, will either flinch or fight back. Musso is not in the range. The samurai's whole model has nothing to work with. The model breaks. The samurai is left holding his iron fan, looking at a man who has just bled on his own robe and who is somehow not playing the game the samurai was playing. A player beyond range is a player who has gotten free of the costume cycle. They are not in the game the table thinks they are in. They are still playing. Musso was still on the boat, you will still be in the hand, but their inner motion is not synchronized to the outer one. They are not, when they win, becoming the guy who wins. They are not, when they lose, becoming the guy who loses. There is nothing for the rest of the table to grab. I have played against 1 or 2 players like this. It is genuinely unsettling. You sit down across from them and you start to feel like none of your normal levers are working. You can needle them, nothing. You can flat them light to take the lead, nothing. You can 3-bet them on a board they shouldn't like, nothing. They are not refusing to engage, they are perfectly engaged. They just aren't taking on the shape of the engagement, they remain themselves, which is somehow much harder to play against than any specific style would be. This is what Beyond Range looks like from across the table. It is the absence of grip. The samurai falls to his knees at the end of the story, and I want to take that seriously, because it is the most surprising part. You might expect the samurai to slink off in shame, to realize he had been a fool, and to go back to his drinking embarrassed. That is what most people would do. But the story says he fell to his knees. He asked to become a student. He was, in one moment of contact with someone who was not playing the game he was playing, converted. I think this is true to life. I have seen it happen at tables. When someone at the table is operating from beyond range, and I do mean a kind of inner beyond range, not a strategic one, the other players feel it. They don't necessarily have words for it, but there is a quality of safety around that person. They are not threatening even when they are winning. They are not pitiful even when they are losing. The chairs near them get easier to sit in. The jokes at their table get a little kinder. The new player, the one who just sat down with shaking hands, looks at them and breathes out. This is the thing I am trying to point at in this whole book. This is Beyond Range, the brand, the dream, the project, not the strategic move. The quality of presence that produces a softer game around you simply by sitting in the chair. The samurai fell to his knees because in his roaring, drunk, lost life, he had finally met someone who was not afraid of him. Not afraid of him in the way the boat was afraid of him. Not afraid of him in the way the world was afraid of him. Not afraid even of the iron fan he carried. The lack of fear in the priest was the most shocking thing the samurai had ever encountered, and it broke him open, and he was grateful. Imagine being that priest at a poker table. Imagine playing 8 hours of poker without ever once becoming the guy who, you are just a player in a game, mere players of a game, ephemeral as a dream. There is a small but important objection to make here, and I want to make it before this chapter ends. A reader could be forgiven for hearing all of this and thinking, so I am supposed to be a doormat. So I am supposed to let the drunks abuse me. So I am supposed to absorb every needle, every slow roll, every angle, and never push back because I am beyond range, and beyond range does not push back. That is not the teaching. Muso, after he got off the boat, did not invite the samurai to keep hitting him. He went back to his monastery. He did not pretend the blow had not happened. He did not deny it had drawn blood. He did not stay on the boat. The game ended, he disembarked. A player who is operating freely is not a player who is unable to fight back. They are a player who has the option of not fighting back because their identity is not at stake in the fight. They can leave the game when leaving is appropriate. They can call when calling is appropriate. They can fold when folding is appropriate. They can put their chips into the middle hard when that is what the spot wants. None of this is in conflict with the inner stillness. The stillness is what makes the right move available, because there is no panicked inner voice demanding a particular outcome. A doormat is not free. A doormat is just afraid in a different direction. The doormat says don't hit me and lets people walk on them as a way of avoiding the hit. Musa was not a doormat. Musa was not avoiding the hit. The hit landed on his head, drawing blood. He was simply not internally asking the hit to be something other than what it was. The difference is everything. In poker, the doormat is the player who folds because confrontation makes him uncomfortable. The free player is the player who folds because folding is correct. From the outside, they can look identical. From the inside, they are opposites. One is fleeing the game. The other is in the game so deeply that the game's noise can't push him out of it. I want you to be the second one. This is the third gate, chapter 4. The Drunken Dancer. A young man once asked an old monk, "What is God?" The old monk thought about it for a long time. The young man waited politely. He was a student of philosophy. He had read the arguments, and he was prepared to engage with whatever the monk said. Maybe the monk would say God was the unmoved mover. Maybe the monk would say God was love, or being, or the great void. Maybe the monk would say God was a useful fiction. Whatever the answer, the young man was ready. Finally, the monk said, "Go and watch a drunken man dance." The young man laughed. He thought the monk was making a joke. The monk was not making a joke. He gestured toward the door. So the young man went out into the village square. It was a festival night. There was music, and there were torches, and there were people dancing badly. And there, in the middle, was a drunken man, an ordinary drunk, swaying, his eyes half closed, his arms going where they wanted to go. He was not dancing in time. He was not dancing well. He was dancing with the entire absurd surrender of a man who has stopped caring whether he is dancing. The young man watched him for a long time. When he came back to the monk, the young man did not say anything for a while. The monk did not ask him to. Eventually the young man said, "I think I see." The monk said, "Don't be too sure." This story is not really about drunkenness, and I am not, for the record, recommending you play drunk. I am pointing at something more specific. There is a kind of knowing that comes through the head, and there is a kind of knowing that comes through the body, and they are not the same thing. The head's knowing is a record of what you have read and inferred. The body's knowing is a record of what you have been through. The head can tell you about a hand. The body can tell you whether a hand is a bluff. The drunken dancer is unable to think. His head is offline. His body is doing all the work. And what his body is doing, in its sloppy way, is what dancing is. Not the polished version, not the trained version, the thing itself. Every now and then in a long career, you will play a session where you can feel this. You will sit down and the cards will come and your decisions will start making themselves before your mind has caught up. You will know in your hands that the guy in seat 4 is bluffing. You will know in your stomach that the river is going to brick. You will 3-bet a hand the chart says you should fold and it will work. And you will fold a hand the chart says you should call and it will turn out to have been a trap. You will play for an hour or 3 or, if you are very lucky, a whole night underneath your own thinking. You will, of course, immediately want to know what you did right, so you can do it again. You will analyze the hand, and the analysis will be flat. The hand on paper will look ordinary. You will not be able to explain to anyone, including yourself, what you did. I just had a feeling. The friend you tell will roll his eyes. You will start to doubt whether anything special happened. You will go back to the solver. And the next time you sit down, hyper aware now, watching for the magic will not come. You will play with your head, and you will play correctly, and you will play tightly, and you will play in your own private judgment well, and you will not have access to whatever it was the drunken dancer was doing. This is the great secret about the dancer that no philosophy book has ever quite gotten across. You cannot will yourself into the dance. The dance is what happens when willing has temporarily stepped out of the room. The moment you try to summon it, you have summoned the wrong thing. You will hear poker players sometimes use the word feel, usually in slightly embarrassed tones. I had a feel for it. The word gets a bad reputation because amateurs use it as cover for being undisciplined. I had a feel he was bluffing, the bad amateur says after calling off his stack with bottom pair. We have all heard this and we have all rolled our eyes and gone back to studying ranges. But the great players have feel. You can deny this for a while if you want to. You can convince yourself that the great players are just better at calculation. You can watch a video of Phil Ivey making a call no one else at the table would make and explain to yourself in great detail the math that justifies it and pretend that what just happened was math. It wasn't math. There was math available. The math allowed the move. But what produced the move in the body in the moment was not the math, it was the drunken dancer. Here is what I think feel is when it is the real thing. Feel is what happens when you have done the math so many times in so many contexts that the math has descended out of your head and into your tissue. The chart has become muscle. The ranges have become smell. The opponent's tells have become a song you have heard so often you no longer need to listen to the lyrics. All of the conscious work has, over years, sunk into a layer underneath consciousness, and from that layer in real time the right move comes up. You cannot fake your way to this, you cannot pretend feel your way past the work. The drunken dancer is dancing on top of 1,000 sober dancers, all of whom did their reps. What the drunkenness allows is for the body to express what was already there. It does not put anything there. This is important because there is a flavor of poker advice circling around right now, and there has been forever, really, that tells players to trust their gut. This advice is correct and dangerous. It is correct for the master who has done the work and whose gut now contains the work. It is dangerous for the novice whose gut contains mostly his most recent tilt. The drunken dancer is beautiful because sober he can dance. The man who is just drunk with no dance underneath is not beautiful. He is just drunk. So why am I telling you this in a book that is supposed to be about beyond range and about being loved and about the soft thing underneath the game? Because I want to make a careful distinction. There is a kind of presence that produces feel. There is also a kind of presence that is its own thing, independent of feel. They overlap, but they are not identical, and confusing them is one of the most common errors I see in players who are trying to get this. The presence that produces feel is the result of long practice. It is technical. It is at its root a craft skill. It allows you to make good poker decisions in real time without having to consciously run through every line. Excellent, necessary. The whole point of grinding for years, the presence I am pointing at in this book is something else. It is not a craft skill. It is not produced by reps. You cannot get more of it by studying harder. It is, and I want to say this carefully, the temperature at which the craft skill is being practiced. It is whether you are home in your own body while the feel is happening. It is whether the win is landing on you with grasping or with simple noticing. It is whether the loss is landing on you with grief or with stickiness or with clean acceptance. You can be a player with great feel and no presence. There are many of them. They are technically magnificent and they suffer constantly. Their feel does not save them. In some cases, their feel sharpens the suffering because they read every nuance of every emotion in the room and have nowhere clean inside themselves to put it. You can also be a player with great presence and only modest feel. There are fewer of these. They tend to play smaller stakes than they could because the technical ceiling is real, but they will be happy. And at the limit they have settled into, they will probably crush because their decisions are not coming through the static of an unhappy nervous system. The dream, and I do mean this is the project of the book, is to be a player with both, whose craft is deep enough that feel is available, and whose inner climate is soft enough that the feel is not contaminated by need. I want to spend a moment on the God part of the original question, because some of you reading this are going to be allergic to the word, and I want to address that. The old monk did not say go and watch a drunken man dance because God is in him. He just sent the young man out to watch. The story is wise enough not to say more. It leaves the seeing to the boy. I am not going to ask you to believe in anything. I am not going to ask you to call anything God if you do not want to. I am, however, going to suggest something that I think is true and that I think you can verify in your own life if you sit with it. There is a way of being at a table and a way of being anywhere that does not feel like you exactly, but that does not feel like not you either. It is a quality of being present that has a kind of softness to it, almost like there is a wider awareness available in the room than just your private one. Your edges get a little less sharp. You stop being so sure where you end. The villain across from you stops looking like an enemy and starts looking like another person trying to do an honest thing in a strange evening. The dealer's tired smile lands a little deeper. The chips on the felt look, briefly, like what they actually are. Little colored discs that we have agreed mean things. When this happens, the room feels almost alive, as if it were watching you back. I do not know what to call this. I am not going to insist you call it anything. You can call it flow if you are a sports psychologist. You can call it presence if you are a meditator. You can call it grace if you are religious. You can call it luck or vibe or not a thing if you are a hard materialist. The label is not the project. The label is in fact often the obstacle, because the moment you label it, the head comes back online and the drunken dancer falls off the edge of the stage. What I want you to know is that this thing is available. It does not require a retreat. It does not require a chant. It does not require you to dress differently or eat differently or change your name. It is closer to you than your wallet right now. Most players have brushed up against it accidentally and not known what to make of it. This book is partly an invitation to brush up against it more often, not because it will make you a better player, though it probably will, because being a person who can brush up against this is a better way to be a person. The last thing about the drunken dancer. He is not, you will notice, performing his drunkenness. He is not acting drunk so that the village will see him as free. He is not posting his drunkenness to a feed. He is not even aware of being watched. He is just dancing. The monk's point is partly that the dancer is for a moment unself-conscious, not in a passed-out way, but in a primary way, the way a small child is unself-conscious, the way a dog is, the way the wind is. In poker, the equivalent is the player who is not, even subtly, being a poker player at us. They are not performing professionalism. They are not performing relaxation. They are not, when they win, performing being cool about winning. They are not, when they lose, performing being fine about losing. They are just there doing the thing. I have noticed that this kind of player is also the kind of player I most want to sit with after the session, even if they took my chips. There is no edge in their presence. There is no one needing to be impressed. We can share a meal and not have to do anything for each other. This is the rarest thing in any room anywhere, and it is the same thing as the drunken dancer, and it is the same thing as Musso on the boat, and it is the same thing this book has been pointing at since page 1. You cannot try to be unself-conscious. The trying is the consciousness. You can, however, forget about trying, and that, paradoxically, is the move that opens the door. The fourth gate is forgetting. Chapter 5. Killing the Buddha. There is an old Zen saying that has frightened me for years. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. I will tell you what it means in a minute. Before I do, I want to tell you a story. In old Japan, there was a scholar monk named Kaseki. He was a learned man, the kind who had read the sutras 3 times through and could quote them at parties. He had built his whole self-conception on his mastery of Buddhist cosmology, which in the version he had inherited placed a great holy mountain at the center of the universe. This mountain, called Sumeru, was the axis of everything. Below it, hells; above it, heavens; around it, the worlds. It was the structure inside which Keiseki lived. Then the Copernican theory arrived. The Earth, it turned out, was not the center of anything. The sun, not the holy mountain, was at the center. The cosmology Kaiseki had built his life on, the diagrams he had drawn for his students, the whole layered architecture of Buddhist space, all of it on a literal reading was wrong. Kaiseki panicked. He did what panicked scholars have always done. He wrote a book. He wrote a long, learned defense of Mount Sumeru. He marshaled every sutra he had memorized. He addressed every objection. He worked on it for years. When it was finished, he was very proud of it. He carried it across the country to present it to his teacher, the master Aikido, and he laid it down on the table with the air of a man who has just saved the religion. Aikido picked it up. He flipped through the first few pages. He pushed it back across the table without finishing it. "How stupid," he said. "Don't you understand? The whole point of Buddhism is to shatter the triple world, to shatter the layers, to shatter the cosmology, and here you are clinging to a mountain, blockhead." Keiseki was, the story says, dumbfounded. He picked up his manuscript and walked out and went home. We do not know what happened to him after that. The story does not say. I like to think he stopped writing the book. I like to think but cannot prove that the master's blockhead was, for Kaiseki, the same kind of stick that Ike swung at Jitoku in the first chapter, a hit that after sitting with it for some weeks, broke open into something larger. Now I can tell you what kill the Buddha means. It does not mean kill the historical man who lived 2,500 years ago and taught under trees. He has been dead a long time. There is no need. It means kill the idea of the Buddha that you are carrying around. Kill the perfect teacher in your head. Kill the version of him you have built up out of books and statues and your own longing. Because the moment you have made an idol of him, you have stopped meeting reality and you have started worshiping the costume you put on reality. The same goes for every other figure you have idealized. Your father, your hero, the player whose YouTube channel you have watched 100 times, the coach you paid for an hour with last year, the teacher you found on a retreat, the author of the last book you read, the author of this book. Kill them all, not as a violence, as a release. They were never the thing. They were fingers pointing at the thing. The moment you mistook the finger for the moon, the moment you started worshiping the player, the coach, the author, the teacher, you took your eye off the moon, which was the only thing they were ever trying to show you. Let me bring this into the poker room, because this is where it gets practical and where most of us are stuck. Every player I know has a system. Some have an explicit one, a list of rules, a coach's playbook, a solver they cross-reference every night. Some have an implicit one, a set of beliefs about what kind of player they are, what their thing is, what the right plays look like in their style. Either way, there is a Mount Sumeru at the center of their poker cosmology. There is a structure, there are layers, there is a hierarchy. They have written in their head a long, careful defense of it. The structure is almost certainly partly wrong. The structure is always partly wrong. The game evolves faster than any one player's model of it. The mathematics evolves, the metagame evolves, the player pool evolves, the format evolves. The chart you internalized in 2018 is not the chart that works in 2025. The reads that crushed live mid-stakes in your home city in 2015 do not work the same way at the same room today. The story you have been telling yourself about the kind of player I am is, and I say this with all possible love, at least partly a fiction held together by your need for it to be true. The Copernicus moment in poker arrives in many forms. Sometimes it is a new training site that exposes a hole you didn't know you had. Sometimes it is a younger player who beats you in a way that violates all your assumptions about what is possible at the table. Sometimes it is a personal break, a long downswing, a financial pressure, a life event that exposes how much of your game was held together by running good rather than by playing well. Sometimes it is just age. Sometimes the reflexes start to go and you can no longer rely on the speed that hid the gaps. When this moment arrives, most players like Kiseki do not surrender. They write the book defending the mountain. They double down on the system. They blame variance. They blame the player pool. They blame the site. They blame the new generation. They go to the regs and complain and get nodded at and feel a little better, and they go back to playing the same way they were playing and they lose a little more. This is the move of the player who cannot kill his Buddha. His Buddha is some past version of himself, some past version of the game, some teacher he canonized at 23 and never updated. The Buddha is sitting on the road. The player walks past, bows respectfully, and continues with his pockets full of bad chips. What I am asking you to do is harder. I am asking you to put down the manuscript. I am asking you to look at the system you have built, the costume you have been wearing, the kind of player I am story you have been narrating, and to ask yourself honestly whether it is still serving you. Not whether it once did, not whether it ought to, whether right now, this season, in this player pool, in this chair, it is serving you. And if the answer, even slightly, is no, to be willing to let it die. The thing nobody warns you about is that letting it die hurts. I do not want to underplay this. There is a reason Kaiseki wrote the book. There is a reason every player I know clings to their system. The system is not just a strategy, the system is a self. To kill the system is to kill the self that was carrying it. There will be a small period, sometimes a long period, where you do not know who you are at the table. The old game is dead and the new game is not yet here. You are floating, you are losing, you feel like an imposter in a chair you have been sitting in for 15 years. The Buddhists call this the bardo, the space between deaths and births, the space where you are neither one nor the other. It is uncomfortable. It is supposed to be. What I want you to know is that the discomfort is the work. Most players cannot stay in the bardo. They reach for the old system again because at least it is familiar. They put the manuscript back together. They tell themselves the bad run is a downswing. They keep going, and the cycle continues until the next forced confrontation, and the next, and the next. Some players, the ones who become great or more importantly free, let themselves stay in the bardo. They let the old game be dead. They allow themselves not to know for weeks or months who they are at the table. They play smaller during this time, they play softer. They study with beginner's eyes. They are willing, in a way that is almost embarrassing, to not be impressive. And gradually, out of the not knowing, a new game emerges, which is theirs but newer, which fits the present player pool rather than a past one, which is in some way theirs again and in some way nothing like what came before. This is the only way I know to keep playing this game over a long career without becoming bitter. You have to be willing to kill, periodically, the Buddha of who you were. I want to apply this to the brand larger question of this book. There is going to be a moment, possibly already, where you do something like the following. You read a chapter of this book and it gives you a small feeling of safety. You decide in the quiet way decisions get made that beyond range is now your thing. You start thinking of yourself as a player who is in the project of being loved and wanted nothing from. You start ever so slightly performing it. Maybe you talk about it with friends, maybe you mention the book. Maybe in a hand you catch yourself thinking, what would a beyond range player do here? And you make a choice based on what fits the identity rather than what fits the spot. When this happens, please kill beyond range. I mean it. I am the one who wrote this. I am telling you, if the words in this book start to become a Mount Sumeru in the middle of your head, take them out. They are doing the opposite of what they were meant to do. This is a book about not needing a costume. If you put Beyond Range on as a costume, the book has failed you, or you have failed the book, or more accurately, the mind has done what minds do, which is take any new freedom and immediately repackage it as a new constraint. The teaching is not be a beyond range player. The teaching is notice how the mind keeps trying to be something. Notice how even now, reading a paragraph telling you not to need an identity, the mind is busy constructing the identity of someone who does not need an identity. Watch that move. Smile at it, do not fight it, let it run its course. The watching is the only training there is. If you meet the beyond range player on the road, you know what to do. There is a beautiful moment in the original story I have not yet returned to. Keiseki goes home dumbfounded. The story ends there. We do not see his transformation. We do not see him have an awakening. We see only him walking home with a book under his arm that he had thought would save him, knowing now that it would not. This is, I think, the most honest ending. Real transformations do not happen on cue. We do not get a Satori scene. We get a man walking home with a heavy manuscript and a heavier feeling and many years still to live. You may have read these pages and felt something move. You may have, in the previous chapter or in this one, recognized the place where you have been clutching a Mount Sumeru. And you may, after closing the book, find that you do not, in fact, immediately let it go. This is fine. This is what is supposed to happen. You are not the master in this story. You are Keiseki. You are going home with the heavy book. The walk is long. The country you will cross while you carry it is many seasons wide. And one day, not today, not because you tried, you will set the book down by the side of the road, and you will not pick it up again. It will be a Tuesday. The dropping will be ordinary. That is the fifth gate, chapter 6. Taking the risk. A student once came to a teacher, troubled. When I first came to you, he said, you told me what to do. You told me how to sit, when to eat, how to bow. It was difficult, but at least I knew. Now you tell me to decide for myself, to follow what I feel, to trust my own being. And I am paralyzed. I am afraid of making the wrong choice. Please, what should I do? The teacher looked at him for a while. There are only two ways, he said. Surrender and let the path carry you, or take the path in your own hands and walk it with everything you have. Both are hard. Either one will work. The student waited for more. The one thing the teacher said that will not work, the one move that is not on the menu, is to stand here in the doorway forever, refusing to choose. That is the only mistake. That is the only sin you can commit against yourself. I want to tell you about a friend. He is a poker player. He has been one for over a decade. He is by any reasonable measure good. He has the bankroll for the next step up. He has the technical chops. He has the time, the energy, the support. He has for several years now been about to move up. He has not moved up. If you ask him why he has not moved up, he will give you reasons. The site is bad right now. The player pool is too tough. The variance is too high at this stake. His personal life has been a little turbulent. He is going to wait until after the holidays, until after the summer, until after this one streak passes. He will give these reasons calmly, and they are not stupid reasons. They are not crazy. They are partly true. And he will be, in 5 years, still at the stake he is at now, giving the same reasons. I love this friend. I do not, when he talks like this, contradict him. I have learned that when someone is in the doorway, it is not useful to push them through it. What I think watching him and what I want to write down here so we can both look at it is that he is doing the only thing that does not work. He is not surrendering and trusting the path. The path, if he trusted it, would have moved him up by now. He is not deciding and walking it with everything he has. That would also have moved him up by now. He is doing the third thing, which is the doorway. He is staying in the doorway. He is being the most measured, most reasonable, most prudent man in the doorway anyone has ever seen. And the years are passing. This is what the teacher in the story meant by the only mistake. There is a fantasy, popular in any line of work, but especially in poker, that the prudent path is no path. That if you do not commit, you cannot lose. That if you do not move, you are at least preserving what you have. This is, from a certain angle, true. You will not lose chips you do not put in. You will not get felted at a stake you do not sit down at. You will not have your manuscript thrown back at you by a master if you never write the manuscript, but you also will not live. The Buddhists have always been clear about this, even though they get caricatured otherwise. People imagine Buddhism as the religion of not doing, as if the goal were to sit very still and have very few opinions and gently fade out of all your engagements. There are pockets of the tradition where it can look that way, but the Buddha himself was an active man. He left his palace, he sat under the tree, yes, but having sat, he stood up and he walked across India for 45 years, teaching anyone who would listen. He went where he was needed. He took the road. The middle way, which is the most famous of his teachings, is not the way of neither. It is the way of both, at the right moment. It is the way that knows when to commit and when to release. What it specifically excludes is paralysis. It specifically excludes the doorway. Let me say what I think this looks like in poker. The decision in any spot is rarely between the right move and the wrong move. Most spots have more than one viable line. The chart will tell you a frequency, call 30%, raise 60%, fold 10%. You are not in real time going to roll dice. You are going to pick. And the pick will be informed by reads, by table feel, by the kind of session you are having, by what you had for breakfast, by 1,000 subtle inputs. Most of the time, several of the available picks are fine. Not all of them are great. Few of them are catastrophic. What I see in struggling players is not usually the wrong pick. It is the unmade pick. It is the tank that goes on too long. It is the hand played in a fog of am I doing this right? It is the decision made out of fear of the alternative decision. It is the call made because folding felt cowardly, or the fold made because calling felt reckless, when neither of those feelings had anything to do with the actual spot. Notice the difference. The wrong pick is just chips. The unmade pick is a self that is in the wrong relationship to the game. The wrong pick costs you a hand. The unmade pick costs you a career. What the teacher in the story is saying is that the unmade pick is the only fatal one. The wrong pick is information. The wrong pick is how you learn. The wrong pick, made cleanly with your full attention in good faith, that is a kind of love letter to the game you played. The game replied no. You will learn from it and move on. The unmade pick, the I'm not sure. Let me think about this for another 3 minutes. Let me consult 2 more sources. Let me wait until the next session. This is not learning. This is the doorway. Nothing comes from the doorway. The doorway has no information in it. The doorway is just a long, exhausting standstill that we pretend to ourselves is wisdom. I want to be fair to my friend in the doorway, because I have been him and you have probably been him too. The doorway feels like wisdom because it feels like not yet. We have language for it. We say we are being patient. We are waiting for the right time. We are making sure we are ready. These phrases are not lies. There are real situations in which patience is correct. There are spots, at the table and in life, where the right move is to wait. The Buddha himself, before he left the palace, waited a long time. He was 29 when he stepped out. He had been preparing in some sense since he was a boy. The test, I think, is this. Is the waiting active? Are you, while waiting, getting closer to the move? Or is the waiting a place you have moved into and decorated and put curtains up in? Are you waiting in a way that has a date on it, even an internal date, even a felt date? Or have you been about to for so long that about to has become your whole address? If you are honest with yourself, you can usually feel which one you are doing. The active waiting has a kind of pressure inside it. There is a tightness, a held breath, a coming soon. The doorway waiting is comfortable. It is the most comfortable thing in your life. That is what makes it so dangerous. Standing still has stopped being painful. The hard thing has become getting started, not staying stuck. You have slowly become the kind of person who is about to. This is the worst thing you can do to yourself, and it is the thing the teacher is warning his student against. So, what do you do if you are reading this and you suspect you might be in the doorway? I am not going to give you a system for stepping out of it because the system is not the move. The move is the move. But I will say this, pick at the start of your next session one thing you have been about to do and do it. It does not have to be the big thing. It does not have to be the move up in stakes. It does not have to be the brave thing your therapist has been suggesting for 3 years. It can be small. It can be, I will 3-bet light in position once tonight, and I will do it in a spot I would normally flat. It can be, I will leave the session at midnight whether I am up or down instead of grinding until I feel right. It can be, I will text the coach I have been thinking about for 6 months and book a call. Just one thing. One small commit. One, I am doing this even though I cannot yet see the whole outcome. What the doorway gets out of you mostly is endless small commits not being made. Every day you negotiate yourself out of one small step. The doorway is not built on one big avoidance. The doorway is built on 100 small avoidances stacked up, every one of which felt reasonable in the moment. Stepping out of the doorway, similarly, is not one big heroic leap. It is one small commit at a time, repeatedly. The first commit will be hard. The second one will be a little easier. By the 10th one, you will have forgotten you were ever in the doorway because the doorway is gone the moment you start moving. You are no longer in front of a thing, you are inside it. Now I want to return to the Beyond Range thread because this chapter sounds on the surface like classic motivation speak. Take action, stop waiting, just commit, and I do not want it to be that. This is not a chapter about hustle. I do not in any way want you to read this and resolve to be a more aggressive player. I do not want you to take bigger risks in some macho sense. The kid in the hoodie who fires his stack in every other hand is also in his way in the doorway. He is in a different doorway, the one where reckless aggression becomes its own avoidance of having to actually think. But he is in a doorway just the same. Both extremes are stuck. The teacher in the story did not say be brave, he said choose a path, either path, surrender and trust, or will and walk. Both are real, both are honest. What is not honest, what is the only sin, is to refuse to step into either. A player operating from beyond range is, in this sense, in the act of constantly choosing. They are not waiting for the perfect spot. They are not waiting for the perfect session. They are not waiting for the perfect mood. They are sitting down with what is in front of them and making the move that is in front of them. If the move is fold, they fold cleanly. If the move is shove, they shove cleanly. If the move is leave, they leave cleanly. There is no almost in their play. This is what taking the risk really means. It does not mean throwing yourself off cliffs. It means refusing to live in the doorway. It means being willing at every spot to make the move that this spot is asking for, and to take whatever the spot replies with. The risk is not the chips are paint. The risk is the self. The risk is that you might step into a path and find out it was not the right one and have to walk back. The risk is that you might be wrong in front of yourself. The risk is that the protected, unmoving, undefeated, untested version of you might have to die, and that something more honest but more vulnerable might have to live. It is the most worthwhile risk you will ever take. I want to leave you with one more line from the original story, slightly modified. The teacher tells his student that there are two paths. He says either one will work. And then he says, almost as an afterthought, this: if you commit a wrong, no problem. You will learn from it. The only wrong that cannot be learned from is the one you spent your life avoiding. There are spots in your life right now that you are avoiding. You know what they are. I do not have to tell you. You are reading this paragraph and they are coming up in your mind one by one in the soft order they come up in when you are alone. I am not asking you to commit any of them right now. I am asking only this. I am asking you to notice the doorway, to see with some clarity that you have been standing in it, to stop pretending even to yourself that the doorway is wisdom. That is enough for this chapter. The noticing is the move. The stepping will come after, on its own, when it is ready, sooner than you think. This is the sixth gate, chapter 7. Fingers at the moon. A master named Foso once stood in front of his students and said something I have never been able to shake. The Buddha, he said, during his lifetime gave thousands of teachings. He spoke of emptiness and of being. He spoke of sudden awakening and of gradual awakening. He spoke yes, and he spoke yes, and he spoke yes. Are these not all yes sayings? His students nodded. And there is another master, he went on, who tells us that there are no beings and no Buddhas, that sages are bubbles on the sea, that great minds are only flickers of lightning. Are these not all no sayings? His students nodded again. If you say yes, he said, you contradict that master. If you say no, you contradict the Buddha. If the Buddha were here in the room with us, how would he answer? The students were silent. Foso smiled. I will let you in on a secret, he said. When I say this is so, perhaps I am not saying yes. When I say this is not so, perhaps I am not saying no. Turn to the east and see the holy western land. Face south and see the northern star. The class ended. None of the students understood. Foso, the text suggests, was not very interested in whether they understood. He had not been making a point. He had been pointing. There is a phrase I keep returning to. The finger is not the moon. A teacher points at the moon and the student looks at the finger. The student studies the finger. The student writes books about the finger. The student starts a school dedicated to the finger. Generations later, there are doctorates in finger studies, and almost no one is looking at the moon. The moon, of course, is still right there. It was always right there. The whole point of the finger was just to direct your eyes upward. I have spent more than a decade in poker, and I can tell you with some certainty that this is what most of poker theory becomes. The charts are fingers. The solver outputs are fingers. The training videos are fingers. The hand histories you replay are fingers. The training rooms, the discords, the coaching, the books, they are all in the truest sense fingers. They are people who have seen something and are trying in the only language available to them to point at it. The thing they have seen, the real thing, the moon, is what makes a great player great. It is not the chart, it is what the chart was trying to describe. This is heretical to say out loud in some poker circles, and I want to be careful. I am not arguing that you should ignore the math. The math is precious. The math is in fact the most articulate and accurate finger we have ever pointed at this thing. To dismiss the math is to be a fool. There is a flavor of poker player who romanticizes feel and disparages study, and that player is in almost every case a worse player than the one who studies, and frequently a more arrogant one. I am not telling you to be that player. I am telling you that the math is not the thing. A solver can show you the equilibrium frequency at which to bluff river in a specific spot. It cannot tell you when to deviate from it because the human in front of you cannot fold the hand he is holding. The deviation is the moon. The frequency is the finger. The finger is real and useful and important and not the moon. A coach can show you the optimal sizing on a wet board in a multi-way pot. He cannot tell you when to sense from across the table that the player to your left has decided, for reasons of his own, to play the next hand like his life depends on it. That sensing is the moon. The sizing is the finger. You can hold the finger, you can study it, you should, and then in the chair in real time you must look up. The deepest poker players I have ever spent time with all have one thing in common, and I want to name it because I think it is the actual subject of this chapter. They are, at their best, not certain. This is the strangest thing about them. You would expect a master to be certain. You would expect at the top of any craft a kind of confident knowing, and on the surface sometimes they look that way. They make their calls without long tanks. They size cleanly. They speak about hands with precision. But if you press them, if you ask them to be honest about what they are doing in real time, they will tell you something like this: I don't know. I had a sense. I was leaning toward it. I felt the spot a certain way. I might be wrong. I'll know in 5 seconds. This is not modesty. This is the moon talking through them. The certainty in poker, the I know this is a bluff, the I know I have to call here, the I know almost always belongs to a player at a particular level of the climb. The player who has internalized the chart and is now applying it. He has graduated from the doorway of not knowing into the room of knowing the charts. He is good, he is winning. He has plenty to teach his less experienced friends, but he is not yet at the level above. The level above is the level where you have studied the charts so thoroughly that you have started to see through them. You have started to notice that the chart is right on average, and that you in the chair are not playing an average, you are playing this hand against this person on this night. The chart is a finger, the hand is the moon, and the moon, like all moons, has its own behavior. It is not on the chart. Phosos, perhaps it is not a yes saying, is the language of the player who has gotten through. He cannot say yes with confidence because he has seen that yes was always a simplification. He cannot say no with confidence because he has seen that no was also always a simplification. What he can do is make the call, in the moment, with full attention, knowing he might be wrong, and accept what comes. This is a much more uncomfortable place to play from than the place of certainty. The certain player sleeps well. He has a system, and the system tells him what to do. When the system is wrong, the variance is to blame. When the system is right, he is to praise. The uncertain player has to live with himself in a way that is more naked. He has to make calls that he cannot perfectly justify. He has to lose hands and not know for sure whether he played them well. He has to learn to be at peace with that not knowing. The peace with not knowing is the moon. The poker writers and content creators of our era have done something interesting, almost without meaning to, that this chapter is partly a response to. They have, in the service of teaching, turned the game into a much more knowable thing than it actually is. They have done this for good reasons. People learn better when there are rules. The training material has to be communicable. A YouTube video that ends with "and now" into it does not get subscribers. So the field has naturally moved toward more articulable, more charted, more solver-derived material. This is genuinely good. This is the modern game crystallizing. There has never been a better time to be a beginner trying to learn poker. The cost of this, and there is always a cost, is that an entire generation of players is being trained to mistake the charts for the game. They have memorized the chart. They have not yet learned that the chart was a finger. You can spot them at the table. They play very correctly. They size very correctly. They time tank very correctly. They are uncrushable in a certain way. and they are very often beatable in another way because they cannot see the specific hand in front of them. They are still looking at the finger. The player across from them is the moon, and they are missing him. I do not want to be sour about this. The chart trained generation is genuinely good. In time, the best of them will look up. Some of them already have. But I think there is a particular gift to be given to younger players right now by older players who have already done the looking up, and that is to gently break their reliance on the chart. Not by mocking it, not by waving it away, by being in the chair next to them, a living example of the player who has gone through the charts and come out the other side, and who is now playing the moon. If you are an older player, this is part of your work, whether you wanted it or not. The younger ones are watching you. They are looking at how you carry yourself between hands. They are looking at whether you tilt. They are looking at whether you study or whether you have gone soft. They are looking at whether. When the math says one thing and your eyes say another, you have the courage to follow your eyes. They are, in other words, deciding whether to keep believing in the finger or to look up. Be the moon they look up at. I want to say something about the connection to beyond range here because the thread might be getting thin and I want to pull it tight. A player operating from beyond range is fundamentally a player who has given up the need to be right in advance. I want to repeat that because it is the heart of this chapter. Given up the need to be right in advance. The chart-trained player wants to be right in advance. The system-loving player wants to be right in advance. The doorway dweller from the last chapter wants to be right in advance. They are all trying, in slightly different ways, to know the outcome before they put the chips in. They are trying to play the river before the river card has landed. The player operating freely has stopped doing this. They put the chips in not knowing. They make the call not knowing. They make the fold not knowing. They are not, of course, doing this carelessly. They have studied, they have feel, they have all the inputs available to a serious player. But they have stopped requiring the inputs to add up to certainty before they act. They have made peace with putting their money on something they are merely fairly sure of. They are willing to be wrong cleanly and to be right cleanly and to find out which one it is at the same time the rest of the table does. This is what beyond range play looks like at its deepest. Not the trickery of a play the chart doesn't have. The internal freedom of acting without requiring the universe to confirm you first. It is also, by the way, what being loved and wanted nothing from finally enables. I want to be careful about this because I am asking a lot of one phrase, but stay with me. The reason most of us cannot act without certainty is that we are afraid of being wrong in front of someone who matters. Some part of us is still trying, even at 35, even at 50, to be the kid who didn't get yelled at by his parent, the kid who got it right, the kid who didn't disappoint. When you sit down at a poker table, that kid is in the chair with you. Every river card is being witnessed by an internalized parent who might be disappointed. Every wrong call is a small failure in front of them. Every right call is a small relief. When you have the experience of being loved and wanted nothing by an actual person, by a teacher, by a tradition, by even a book like this one, if it does what it is trying to do, something starts to shift inside that. The internal parent gets quieter. The witness in your chair becomes friendlier. The need to be right in advance starts to soften because being wrong is no longer being failed in front of the only audience that matters. This is the move that no chart can teach you. This is, in the truest sense, the moon. The chart can take you to the door of the room. It cannot walk you in. What walks you in is the strange and quiet experience of being looked at by something without judgment. I am, in writing this chapter, trying to be one of those some things. I am not at the table with you. I am almost certainly not even in your country. But the words on this page are, in their slow way, looking at you. They are saying, you do not have to be right in advance. Here, you do not have to know which way the river will go here. We will be on your side either way. If that lands, even slightly, that is the moon. The finger of this chapter is, well, this chapter. The moon is what you feel when you put the book down. The seventh gate is the moon. Chapter 8. Collecting seashells. The Buddha was once asked how to live so that life felt fresh. The questioner was getting older. He had been a student for a long time. The teachings had become familiar. He could finish his teacher's sentences. The wonder had drained out of his practice. He still loved the work, but he felt that he had heard it all before. He was, he said, stale. The Buddha listened. When the questioner was done, the Buddha said something simple. Die every moment. The questioner did not at first understand. He thought he was being told that he was already half dead. He thought it was a rebuke. He sat with it. Over time, he came to see that it was not a rebuke. It was a gift. What the Buddha had told him was this. The reason the teachings had gone stale was not that the teachings had aged. The teachings were the same as they had always been. Teachings are like that. What had aged was his mind around them. The mind had collected all the previous times it had heard the teaching, and it was now interpreting today's teaching through the filter of yesterday's. There was a thick stack of yesterdays between him and the words he was hearing. He had been carrying the past around with him so heavily that nothing new could land. Die every moment, the Buddha had said, meant let the previous moment be over. Let it die. Don't carry it. Put it down. Then the next moment, when it arrives, can be itself, not a comment on, or a continuation of, or a confirmation of the one before. This is the eighth gate. In poker, the practical version of this is, every hand is the first hand. I do not mean this as a slogan. I mean it as a description of how the best players actually play. The hand you just lost is over. The chips have moved. The dealer has shuffled. A new shuffle has come out of the machine. The cards being dealt to you right now have no memory of the cards that were dealt to you 10 minutes ago. They are, in the most literal sense, a new event. They have nothing to do with the previous event except that they are happening at the same table with the same people. What is at the table that does have a memory is you. Your body remembers the loss. Your stomach remembers the cooler. Your eyes remember the river card. Your nervous system, which is the most ancient part of you and which does not really understand the structure of poker, is busy interpreting this new hand through the lens of the last one. If the last one was a loss, this one will feel in your tissue like the start of another loss. If the last one was a win, this one will feel like a continuation. The cards do not know any of this. The cards are doing their own thing. You are doing yours, and your thing is contaminated by yesterday. This is what tilt really is, in its deepest form. Tilt is the failure to let the previous moment die. The novice thinks of tilt as a hot, angry state. The drunken uncle tilt, the throwing chips tilt, the I'm going to show this bastard tilt. That is the spectacular form of it. It is also the rarest form. Most tilt is much quieter. Most tilt is a slight tightening of the throat after a beat that nobody else noticed. Most tilt is a slightly faster call than you would have made an hour ago. Most tilt is a small thought loop running in the background. I'm running so bad, I'm running so good, I should have folded. I'm going to felt this guy. I have to win this back. I have to protect what I've made. These loops are the past, alive, and the present. They are the previous moment refusing to die. A player who has gotten through this, and there are players who have, and they are unmistakable when you sit with them, has trained themselves to let each hand be the first hand, not by some magic of will, by 1,000 small acts of putting down. The shuffle is the cue. The dealer's hands moving over the cards is the cue. The chip being placed on the cards by the dealer to mark the live hand is the cue. Whatever it is, there is a moment between hands where this player puts the previous hand down. They don't review it in real time. They don't replay it in real time. They mark it, file it, and move on. The hand will get its replay later on a screen in a study session with a clear head. For now, it is over. This is what the Buddha was pointing at when he said die every moment, not the morbid version, the clean one. I want to share something a little embarrassing. I used to keep in my head a list of bad beats, a small running ledger, not in writing, just in memory. I could, if you had pressed me, have produced the worst 10 beats of my career in chronological order, with the cards, with the stakes, with the room they happened in. I held them with a kind of dim grievance. They were injuries. The universe owed me something for them. Once I realized I was doing this, I tried to stop. I tried by force of will. I told myself, let it go, you sound like a child. The list didn't budge. I tried by exposure. I told the beats to friends, hoping they would lose their power. The list didn't budge. If anything, telling them made them more vivid. I tried by reframing. I told myself that the beats were teachers, that they had made me a better player, that I should be grateful. The list didn't budge, because the list was not held by an argument, it was held by something pre-verbal. What worked in the end was something embarrassingly simple. I started between hands to notice the cleared felt. Just the felt, the little green or blue patch of cloth, freshly empty, cards gone, chips gone, dealer's hands moving, felt briefly blank. The blank felt, I noticed, did not care about my list. The blank felt did not know I had a list. The blank felt was in the most literal way the present. It was the part of the table that was telling me every 30 seconds that the past was over. I started, when I could remember to, just looking at the blank felt for a beat between hands. After a few months of this, and I am not exaggerating, it was months, I noticed the list had gotten smaller. Not because I had argued it down, because I had stopped feeding it. Each time I looked at the blank felt, I had failed to add a new beat to the ledger. The ledger requires constant maintenance to stay alive. If you stop maintaining it, it starts to age. Now, years later, I still have beats, I still have hands that sting, but I do not keep a ledger anymore. The hand stings for an hour or an evening or once after a particularly bad one a week, and then it is gone. The felt is blank again. There is something quieter in me than there used to be. I am telling you this not because the trick will work for you. The trick might work for you, it might not. I am telling you this because the move itself is available to you, and the move is not complicated. The move is just let the previous moment be over. The way you do it does not matter. What matters is that you do it. Some people use breath, some people use a small physical gesture, a tap on the table, a stretch of the fingers. Some people use a phrase. Some people, like me, use the blank felt. The form is yours. The work underneath is the same. I want to make one more move with this because it is connected to something deeper than tilt. There is, in every poker career I have observed up close, a moment where a player realizes that what they have been carrying is heavier than they thought. It is usually not one big realization. It is usually a small one, in some ordinary session after some ordinary beat. They put down their cards and they think, I have been carrying this since 2017. Or, I have been playing as if my brother is watching me even though he hasn't watched me play in 15 years. Or, I have been trying to win back a specific amount of money that someone took from me a decade ago. Or, I have been at war with a coach I haven't spoken to in 8 years. The realization is almost always that the player has been playing the present hand against the past, that the river card has been being judged not just by the river but by 100 previous rivers, that the villain across the table is not just the villain across the table, he is wearing faintly the face of someone the player has not forgiven. When this realization arrives, the player has a choice. They can dismiss it as a soft thought, finish the session, and not think about it again. Many do. Or they can sit with it. If they sit with it, what usually happens in my experience is that they begin slowly a kind of unburdening. Not therapy exactly, though sometimes they end up in therapy. Just a quiet process of recognizing hand by hand, day by day, how much of their current play is being shaped by old grief. How many of the chips going in are going in for old reasons? How many of the chips not going in are also going in or not going in for old reasons? This is a real thing. It is not a poker thing. It is a human thing. We all do it. We all play the present against the past. We all carry in our shoulders and our gut 1,000 small grievances and longings that have been with us so long we cannot remember when they arrived. The Buddha was fundamentally in the business of helping people put these down. I do not think you can put them down by being told to. You cannot decide intellectually to release a long-held grief. The grief is held by something older than your intellect. The intellect, when it tries to release the grief, just stages a performance of release that looks suspiciously like the grief in different clothes. But you can slowly make space in which the grief stops being useful. You can hand by hand refuse to feed it. You can between hands notice the blank felt. You can between sessions get curious about what you are still carrying. You can between years find a person or a teacher or a practice that can help you look at it, and gradually on a timeline that is much slower than the impatient self would prefer, things start to fall off you. The hands get fresher. The hands get fresher because you get fresher. This is what the Buddha was offering. Not a trick, a practice, a way of being in time that releases time as it goes instead of accumulating it. There is a beautiful image at the heart of the original story about freshness, and it is the image of a small child. The Buddhists and the Zen masters had a particular love for small children. Not the sentimental love we are encouraged to have in modern times, the aren't they cute love, a more serious love. They thought of small children as a kind of evidence, evidence that the human being is in some basic state already in the freshness the practice is trying to lead us back to. A small child playing in a room is not playing against the previous time they played in the room. The blocks they are stacking right now are not informed by the blocks they stacked yesterday. The tower fell yesterday, they cried, they got over it, they went to bed. Today the blocks are blocks. The tower is a new tower. The child is at full attention. The child is home in the activity in a way that almost no adult is. The Buddha did not say be a child. He was specific. He said be like a child, without saying it that way. He said die every moment. The dying is the practice. The child has the gift naturally because the child has not yet accumulated enough yesterdays to lose it. We adults, having accumulated, have to put down what the child has not yet had to pick up. At a poker table, the test of whether you have done this is simple. After a beat, can you breathe? Can you look at the next hand as the next hand? Can you look at the villain who just felted you and see him in this new hand as just another player at the table with no special bill outstanding? Can you, when the dealer shuffles, let it be a new shuffle? If you can, you are at the eighth gate. You will not be able to all the time. You will not be able to even most of the time, probably for years, but every time you do it, every time you let one hand actually die before the next one starts, you have in some small way gotten there. The dying is the practice. The freshness is the reward. And the freshness is not a reward. It is just what is left when the past finishes leaving the room. Chapter 9. Dead with Dignity. There was a Zen master named Fugai who lived in seclusion in the mountains. He painted, the texts say, beautifully. He was generous to his students, severe with himself, and slightly feared by everyone who knew him. One day, in old age, he felt his death coming. He did not panic. He did not call anyone. He did not write anything down. He walked out into the field behind his hut and found a man digging in the earth, a peasant, the texts say, with a shovel. Fugai asked the man to dig a hole. The man, knowing who he was, dug the hole without asking why. When the hole was deep enough, Fugai climbed in. He stood inside it, straight, his robes around him. He looked at the man with the shovel. "Cover me with the earth," he said. The man dropped his shovel and ran. After some time, the man came back with a few villagers. He had not been able to explain to himself what was happening, and he wanted witnesses. The villagers came up over the rise, and they saw, standing in the hole, exactly as the man had left him, the master. He was already dead. He had died standing, the texts say, with great dignity. I have been carrying this story around for a long time, and I am still not sure I understand it. I understand the surface. A great man dies cleanly on his own terms, in a manner so undramatic that it is almost a joke. He dies the way he lived, tidy, deliberate, almost embarrassed by ceremony. He digs his own hole. Well, he gets someone to dig it for him, which is funny too, and he steps in and he goes. What I am not sure I understand is the deeper layer, which has something to do with how the rest of us might prepare ourselves to do this. Not literally, not the whole, not necessarily on the same day our body decides to stop, but the quality of going clean, the dignity of leaving a room you were in for a long time without making a scene. Most of us, when we leave any room, leave a mess. We leave business unfinished. We leave words unsaid. We leave grievances open. We leave promises uncashed. We leave the room in much the same condition we lived in it, half arrived, half departed, never fully present in either direction. Fugai is interesting because he seems to have been fully present in his life all along, and so leaving was not a departure but a continuation. There was nothing he had to wrap up because he had not been leaving threads loose. There was nothing he had to forgive because he had been forgiving as he went. There was no goodbye he had to say because every conversation he had ever had with anyone had already been in some sense complete in itself. He climbed into the hole because the hole was, at that moment, the obvious thing to climb into. In poker, the equivalent of Fugai's death is not what you think it is. You might think it is quitting the game, the retirement, the walk away, the last session before the move into something else. This is part of it, but it is not the deepest part. The deepest part is something that happens or fails to happen every time you leave the table for any reason. Every session ends. Some end at the end of a night, some end midnight, some end at the end of a bullet in a tournament, some end at the start of a downswing. The question of how you leave a session is one of the most overlooked aspects of a poker career. Most players leave badly. Most players leave with the head still in the last hand. They are walking out of the room, getting in the car, opening the front door, and they are still playing the river card they got hit with 30 minutes ago. They lie down in bed and they are still in the hand. They wake up the next morning and the hand is still there in the third drawer of the mind, where they were trying to put it, they have, in the most precise sense, not left the table. They have only moved the table into their body. Fuga's lesson is that you have to climb out of the session as cleanly as he climbed into the hole. You have to mark in some intentional way that this session is over. You have to leave the actual table and the inner table at the same time. Otherwise, you are paying rent on a room you are no longer in. This is a real practice. I do not think most players take it seriously enough. The way you end a session is at least as important as the way you start one, and probably more so because the end is what you carry with you into the next 23 hours of your day. I want to tell you about the cleanest exit I have ever seen. A player I will not name was on a tier. He had been running deep in a tournament series, had cashed 3 or 4 events, was up significantly, was the kind of running good that draws crowds. On the second day of a 5K, he was in the top 10 in chips with 20 players left. He busted on a hand that by all rights should not have happened to him. A miracle one outer river, the kind of beat that in the bar afterward gets told and retold, the kind of beat that ruins the next week of a normal player's life. I watched him at the table after the hand. He pushed his chair back. He shook the hand of the player who had beaten him. He picked up his bag, he nodded at the dealer, he said thank you. He walked, without hurry, out of the room. I caught him at the elevator. I said something about the beat, some commiseration, the standard murmur of the poker afterlife. He looked at me with this strange expression. He said, yeah, that was a hand. He said it like a man reporting the weather. Not flat, not numb, not performatively zen. Just, that was a hand. He was, I realized, already not in it. He had climbed out of the hole before he stood up from the table. The bust-out hand had happened. He had felt what was there to feel, and I do not think he was suppressing anything. His face was readable. There was a real loss there. And then he had set the hand down, put on his coat, and left the room. He went and got dinner. I had dinner with him. We did not talk about the hand. We talked about a movie his daughter had recommended. He went to sleep at a reasonable hour. He played the next day's event and crushed it. I have thought about that elevator a lot. I have thought about what it would take to leave a session, any session, the way he left that one. It is not, I now think, primarily a discipline. It is not something you achieve by force of will. It is something that becomes available to you when you have, in some prior way, agreed with yourself that this is how you will live. You have to have decided, before the bust out, that the bust out will not own you. You have to have decided before the bad beat that the bad beat will not become a tenant. You have to have decided before the session that you will be the one who closes the door behind you when you leave. There is a saying in some old monastic traditions, and I am going to give it to you imperfectly because I cannot remember the exact source. Live each day as if it were your last lesson. It is not a morbid line. It is not a memento mori. It is in its truest form a kind of softness. Live each day as if it were your last lesson means do not save your softness for tomorrow. Do not say to the person across from you, I will be kind to him next time. Do not save the call you have been meaning to make. Do not save the apology. Do not save the thank you. Do not especially save the I love you. If there is anyone in your life who has any chance of dying before you have said it again. I am pulling this thread into the poker thread because it is in fact the same thread. The way you leave a poker session is the way you leave a marriage, is the way you leave a career, is the way you leave a life. The skill is the same. The skill is climbing out of the hole cleanly on your own terms before anyone has to climb in after you. You can train this skill in small ways. The way you end a phone call, the way you finish a meeting, the way you close a tab on your laptop, the way you walk away from a difficult conversation, the way you say goodbye to a friend at the end of a dinner. None of these are dramatic. All of them are practice. Each one is a chance to finish the thing, to leave it complete, to not carry it. If you have spent any time around someone who is dying, really dying, not the action movie version, but the slow version, in a bed with time to talk, you may have noticed something. The people who do this well, who go like Fogai went, are not the people who lived bigger lives. They are not necessarily the people who achieved more, who traveled further, who built more. They are the people who finished things as they went. They left rooms in good order. They had told the people who mattered to them what mattered. They had, in their small ways, climbed out of every previous hole cleanly, and so the last hole was just another one. I am not asking you to think about death tonight. You probably do not need to. What I am asking you to think about is the next time you leave a table, the next time the session ends in whatever way it ends. Try just once to close it cleanly, to stand up, to thank the room, to mean the thanks, and to walk out without carrying it. You will find this is harder than it sounds. You will find that some piece of the session will try to come with you. That is fine. The trying to come with you is the practice. You notice it, you set it down, you keep walking. Maybe 10 steps later it comes back. You set it down again. By the time you get to your car, your hands will be a little freer than they would have been. That is the ninth gate. I want to add one last thing about Fugai before we move on, because I do not want to leave you with the impression that he was a cold figure. The texts say he was generous to his students, funny even. He was a painter, and his paintings, many of which survive, are full of warmth and lightness and a strange small humor. He painted a lot of self-portraits in which he made himself look ridiculous. He laughed at his own seriousness. I am telling you this because there is a flavor of teaching about death and detachment that comes off as cold. Detach, don't get attached, don't care too much, don't let it land. This is not the teaching I am pointing at, and it is not what Fugai was modeling. Fogai was deeply attached to his students, to his paintings, to the mountain he lived on. He cared about all of them. What he had figured out was how to be attached in a way that did not require permanence. He could love his students fully and also know with complete equanimity that one day he would leave them. He could love his paintings fully and know that one day the paintings would burn or fade. He could love his life fully and know that one day in some field behind some hut he would step into a hole. The freedom is not the absence of love. The freedom is the love that does not require its object to be permanent in order to be real. Bring this to the table. Love the hand you are playing. Love it the way Fugai loved his students. Care about the call you are making. Care about the player across from you, the dealer, the room, the night, and know while you are loving all of this that the hand will end, the player will leave, the night will pass. Let the loving and the impermanence be in the same body at the same time. This is the ninth gate, more truly stated, not coldness. The warm, dignified walking away of a man who was fully here while he was here. Chapter 10. Living in Nirvana. A man came to a teacher and complained about the egos in his community. Everywhere I look, he said, I see vain people, proud people, people who think they are special. They are in my workplace, they are in my family, they are even in this meditation group I joined to escape all that. The teacher I had before you was an egomaniac. I don't know what to do. The world is full of vain men. The teacher listened. When the man was done, the teacher told him a story. A psychologist was giving a young man a test. The psychologist drew a vertical line on a piece of paper and asked, "What does this make you think of?" The young man said, "Sex." The psychologist drew a circle. "What about this? Sex. A star. sex. After 10 minutes, the psychologist looked up gravely. Young man, he said, I have to tell you, you have an obsession with sex. Me? The young man said. You're the one drawing all the dirty pictures. The teacher smiled at his student. Whatever you see in every direction, he said, was first inside you. The vain people are vain. They will have their own consequences, but the reason you see them everywhere is that you are carrying the lens. Drop the lens. The vain people will still be there. You will just stop being so good at finding them. This is in some ways the most uncomfortable chapter in the book. It is uncomfortable because it asks you to take responsibility for what you have been blaming on other people. I want to be very careful here. There is a flavor of take responsibility coaching that does real harm. It is the version of the teaching that tells the abuse victim that her abuse is her fault for attracting it. It is the version that tells the marginalized that their marginalization is a result of their own low vibration. It is the version that turns a deep psychological truth into a weapon used against the wounded. I do not ever mean that. If someone has hurt you, they have hurt you. The hurt is real and the hurt is theirs. What this chapter is about is something more specific, and it is something that becomes available to you only when you are already at least partially safe. It is about the way the mind in a stable life projects what is inside it onto everything outside it. It is about the way you, sitting at a poker table where nothing bad is happening to you, can spend 3 hours irritated by someone whose only crime is reminding you of someone else. In poker, projection is constant and almost never noticed. The new player at table 6 who keeps slow rolling, does he know he is slow rolling, or is he just slow at processing? You have decided he is the villain. Maybe he is. Maybe he is also just nervous. The reg in seat 4 who barely looks at you when he scoops a pot from you, is he being cold or is he just tired? You have decided he is condescending. Maybe he is. Maybe he is just running on 3 hours of sleep. The kid in the hoodie who has been 3-betting you all night, is he picking on you or is he just playing his strategy? You have decided he is after you. Maybe he is. Maybe he has been firing at the same frequency at every player at the table, and you have only noticed when it landed on you. The dealer who keeps shuffling slowly, is he doing it to spite you, or is he just an older dealer doing his job at his own pace? You have decided he is incompetent. Maybe he is. Maybe he is just the human he is. In each of these cases, the lens is doing more work than the world is. The world is producing a certain amount of information about each of these people, a slow tell, a glance, a bet sizing, a pace, and your lens is producing interpretation much faster than the information can support. You were filling in the gaps with a story about who these people are. The story is almost always a story about who you are afraid you are. The player who decides the kid in the hoodie is bullying him is often a player who has been bullied. The information from the table is a few 3-bets. The interpretation comes from somewhere much older. The lens is doing its work. This is the part of poker no chart can ever address. The chart can tell you what to do with the 3-bet. The chart cannot tell you why this particular 3-bet by this particular kid is making you feel small in your chair. The smallness is not in the bet. The smallness is in the part of you the bet has reactivated. The deeper version of this, and the version that I think is the gift of this last chapter, is the following. Everyone at the table is in some way a mirror, not in a mystical sense. In a very specific psychological sense, you are sitting in a chair, you have a nervous system that has been forming since you were 2, and that nervous system is constantly trying to figure out the room. It does this by pattern matching. It looks at the player across from you and asks, "Who does this remind me of?" And it answers almost instantly with someone from your past. Sometimes the match is obvious. He reminds me of my brother. Sometimes the match is dimmer, something about him makes me uncomfortable, and I do not know why. But the matching is happening constantly under the surface. This is not a flaw, it is how nervous systems work. It is how we have always functioned in social situations, going back to the savannah. The matching used to keep us alive. It still keeps us alive, in a way. It is not the enemy. What you can do, and this is what the teacher in the story is pointing at, is notice when the matching is doing more than its share of the work. Notice when the player across from you is no longer the player across from you. Notice when he has briefly become a stand-in for someone else. Notice when your tilt is not actually about this hand or this villain, but about an older score you have not yet settled. When you notice this, several things become available. First, your read on the player gets cleaner because you stop projecting an inner movie onto him. Second, your play gets cleaner because you are no longer making decisions that are partly meant to redress an old grievance. Third, and this is the deepest one, you start to like the players at the table more because you start to see them as themselves, strange, complicated humans doing their best under bad lighting at 1 in the morning rather than as figures in your private theater. When this third thing starts to happen, you have in some real sense arrived. I want to tell you what I mean by arrived, because the word can be misleading. The chapter is called Living in Nirvana, and nirvana is one of the most overloaded words in the English language. It has been used to sell candles. It has been used to sell beach vacations. It has been used to name a great rock band. It has been used in 1,000 books to refer to a kind of permanent blissed out state that the practitioner achieves and then floats around in for the rest of their life, dispensing wisdom from a slight elevation. This is not what the word means in its original context. The word means more or less the going out of a flame, the cessation of grasping, the end of the kind of wanting that produces suffering. It does not mean a permanent high. It does not mean a special elevated state. It means, at its simplest, the absence of the inner friction that has been making everything harder than it needed to be. You can have this. You can have this in patches right now, today. You have probably already had it without knowing what you had. There are moments, a morning coffee, a long walk, a quiet stretch at the end of a session, where the inner machinery briefly stops, the wanting goes quiet, the comparing stops, the narrative thins out. You are, for a moment, just where you are, doing what you are doing, in the room that you are in. The flame briefly has gone out. These moments are nirvana. They are not a preview of nirvana. They are not a partial nirvana. They are the thing. They come and go. They will keep coming and going for the rest of your life. The work of a practice is not to make them permanent. They cannot be made permanent, but to recognize them when they happen and to stop treating them as anomalies. In poker, these moments often arrive at the end of a long session, after you have stopped caring about the outcome. You have made your money or you have not. The session is winding down. You are just playing now because you are at the table and the cards are coming. There is a peculiar lightness in this part of the night. The grasping has tired itself out. The lens has gotten quieter. You are seeing the players around you more clearly than you saw them at hour 2 because you have stopped needing anything from them. This is what I mean by living in nirvana. Not a state, a quality of attention that becomes more available as the grasping wears down. You can practice it. You can practice it by deliberately at the start of a session not needing the outcome, by telling yourself with whatever fraction of belief you can muster, I am here for the playing. The score will be the score. I do not need this session to go a particular way for me to be okay tonight. You will not believe yourself at first. the grasping will laugh at you. Keep doing it anyway. After a few months, it stops laughing. I want to bring this all the way back to the project of the book because we are almost at the end, and I want to make sure the thread is visible. Beyond range, the brand, the feeling, the whole thing is in its essence the player who has quieted the lens. They have done some version of the work the teacher in the story was pointing at. They have noticed that the villain across the table is partly a projection. They have stopped mostly casting other people as figures in their drama. They have, as a result, become much harder to read because there is less of them to read. The inner theater is thinned out. They are not playing against the room, they are just at the table with these particular humans on this particular night. The phrase I have been using throughout this book is wanted nothing from. I want to give it back to you now with the meaning it has accumulated over these chapters. A player who has wanted nothing from is a player who has quieted their own demands of the table. They have not stopped caring about winning, they have stopped requiring the table to make them feel a particular way. They have stopped requiring the villain to confirm their self-image or to deny it. They've stopped requiring the dealer to give them a particular run of cards as evidence that the universe loves them. They've stopped in the smallest and largest ways, needing the room to be other than it is. A player like this is, by the simple fact of being at the table, giving something to everyone else at it. They are not doing anything special, they are not saying anything wise, they are just not grasping, and the not grasping radiates. Other people sitting near them find their own grasping getting quieter. The game itself around this player gets a little softer, a little kinder, a little more like what poker secretly always was, a strange tribal ritual where humans take turns offering each other small surprises with cards. To play from this place is the deepest beyond range there is. This is what I have been pointing at this whole time. It is the 10th gate and the last one we are going to mark, and it opens directly onto a small clearing where the book ends and your life resumes exactly where it always was. You have already been here. You are here now. Epilogue. I want nothing from you. I want to talk to you directly for a few pages. We have been together for a long time now, in book time. If you have read straight through, we have spent some hours in each other's company. If you have read in pieces over weeks or months, the company has been spread out but no less real. There is a thing that happens between a writer and a reader that has nothing to do with whether they have ever met or ever will. The thing is real. It is not the same as a friendship, but it is also not nothing. I have been with you in my way throughout these pages. You have in your way been with me. I want to use this small remaining space to do the only thing I really meant to do with this book. I want to tell you that I want nothing from you. I do not want you to buy a course. There is no course attached to this book. There will not be one. I do not want you to follow me on a feed somewhere. If you do, fine. If not, also fine. I do not want you to agree with me. I do not want you to disagree with me. I would, if anything, like you to forget about me as soon as you set the book down, and to take whatever in here landed in you and treat it as if it had always been yours. I do not want you to be a better poker player. If you become one, good. That is between you and the felt. I do not want you to be happier. I do not want you to be wiser. I do not want you to be more peaceful. I do not want you to be any particular way at all. These are not things I am qualified to want for you. These are things you have your own relationship with. What I wanted in writing this book was to be in the room with you for a little while, in a way that did not need anything to happen. That's it. That's the whole project. I wanted to sit with you through the pages, the way the master sat on the boat, the way Fugai sat in his garden, the way the Buddha sat under the tree, Not in a teacherly way, not in a wise way, just in a here way, a you are not alone way. A whatever is happening on your side of this page is okay with me way. If by the time you have finished this book you have had even one moment of feeling that, even one paragraph where you felt yourself relax in a way you cannot quite explain, then the book has done what I made it for. I want to say something I am a little embarrassed to say. You are loved. I do not know you. I do not, in the literal sense, love you. We have never met. I cannot tell you anything about your life. I have no information about you that would allow me to make a serious claim of personal love. What I can tell you is something else. I can tell you that the love I am pointing at is not the kind that depends on knowing you. It is older than information. It is the kind of love that the boat felt for Muso when he was hit and did not flinch. It is the kind of love that the field felt for Fugai when he stepped into the hole. It is the kind of love that the tree felt for the man who sat under it for years until his mind finally gave up and let him see. This love does not need to know you to find you. It is, in fact, looking at you right now. I am telling you this because I think you have spent a lot of your life feeling as if you needed to earn being looked at this way. Many of us were raised in environments where attention was conditional, where being loved was something you had to deserve or perform or work for, where the gaze of the people around you was always lightly transactional, even when those people meant well. This is most of us. This is the standard human upbringing in a transactional civilization. You bring this conditioning to the poker table. You bring it to your job. You bring it to your dating life. You bring it even to your spiritual life, where you try to earn the love of whatever ultimate thing you suspect is out there. You bring it to this book. Part of you is reading this paragraph wondering whether you are good enough to be the kind of person who would deserve to feel what I am describing. That part of you is the one I have been writing to. It is the part of you that gets called the ego in some traditions and the wounded child in others and the survival strategy in others still. The name does not matter. What I want to tell that part of you is the only thing I have to say. You did not have to earn this. You did not have to win the pot. You did not have to move up in stakes. You did not have to be wise. You did not have to be still. You did not even have to read this book. You are looked at by something exactly the way I have been describing this whole time. You always were. You always will be. The only thing that has ever been in the way of you feeling it is your conviction that you had to do something to make it happen. I am going to give you one more story, and then I am going to leave you to your evening. There was, in old India, a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a small life, and she was happy in it. She had a husband and a son. The son died, a fever, an accident, the texts do not say. She went mad with grief. She carried the child's body around her village, asking everyone she met for a medicine that would bring him back. They did not have such a medicine. They thought she was insane. They turned away from her. Eventually, someone, taking pity, told her that the Buddha was passing through the area and that he had medicines no one else had. She ran to him with the body in her arms. She begged him for the medicine. The Buddha looked at her. He looked at the child. I can make the medicine, he said, but I will need one ingredient, and it is rare. You will need to bring me a single mustard seed from a household in this village that has not known death. She ran from house to house. She knocked on every door. Have you lost anyone? A child, a parent, a brother, a wife, a friend? At each house the answer was yes, of course, of course, of course. There was no house in the village where death had not entered. At the end of the day she stopped running. She sat down on the road. She looked at the child in her arms. She understood slowly what the Buddha had been doing. She buried her child. She came back to the Buddha and became one of his students. She lived, the texts say, the rest of her long life in a kind of soft, attentive peace. I am telling you this story because I want you to know that the project of this book, the loved, the wanted nothing from, the freedom at the table, the freedom in the life, is not something I made up. It is not a marketing position. It is not a brand strategy. It is something that humans have been finding their way to for thousands of years, on country roads, in monasteries, in fields, in bedrooms, in casinos. You are walking on a path that has been walked. You are not the first person to have looked at the dead child in your arms, the dead hand, the dead session, the dead version of yourself, and asked for a medicine that would bring it back. You are not the first person to have been gently shown that there is no medicine. You will not be the last. You are not alone on this road. You are not alone in this hand. You are not alone in this evening. The love I have been pointing at this whole book, the kind that wants nothing from you, is the same love that sent Kisa Gotami from door to door until she understood. It is the same love that hit Jotoku across the face. It is the same love that climbed into Fugai's hole with him. It is the same love that you, on your best night, give back to the strangers at your table when you stop needing them to be anyone other than what they are. It is all the same love. It is here right now in this paragraph. It will be here when you close the book. I want to give you the last gift this book has to give, which is also the smallest one. When you close the book, in 5 seconds, or in 5 minutes, or whenever you do, I want you to put it down and notice the room you are in, not the room of your life, the actual room, the chair you are sitting in, the light, the air, whatever is making sound in the background. Notice that the room does not need you to do anything. Notice that the room is, in its own quiet way, fine with you. Notice, if you can, that you are being looked at by this room in exactly the way I have been trying to describe. You do not have to do anything with this. You do not have to take it as a sign. You do not have to remember it. You do not have to thank anyone. You can just notice for a breath that you are here, and that here is in some way that words cannot quite catch on your side. That is enough. That is everything. That is, in the end, what Beyond Range was always pointing at. The seat at the table where you are wanted nothing from. The seat in your own life where you are wanted nothing from. The seat that has in fact been yours the entire time, and that you have been welcome to occupy whenever you remembered it was there. Go play your hand. I love you. I want nothing from you. I am here. The end. And also the beginning.